Tonight on Greater Boston, with growing fears of Russia invading Ukraine and plenty of questions about how involved the U.S. will and should be, Congressman and former Marine Captain Seth Moulton, back from Ukraine in December, joins me. Then later, the co-founders of the annual Winter Walk, which raises awareness and funds to satisfy one ambitious goal, ending homelessness in Boston. And finally, a minute with a man who's a Hall of Famer off the field, too. With tensions rising and the increasing likelihood that Russia is getting ready to invade Ukraine, the U.S. and other NATO allies are getting ready to step in. The U.S. is shipping hundreds of millions of dollars of weapons and readying to send more than 8,000 troops to the region to respond to the threat. And Joe Biden says he's also considering direct sanctions on Russian President Vladimir Putin himself, a step the U.S. has long avoided. While Putin has repeatedly denied he's preparing to invade, blaming the U.S. and its allies for escalating the conflict, and Ukraine's president is maintaining he's working toward a peaceful settlement, White House officials say they believe invasion is imminent, although the president did admit yesterday that Putin can be unpredictable.
I'll be completely honest with you. It's a little bit like reading tea leaves.
But as for what's at stake, Biden spoke with a lot more certainty.
There will be enormous consequences if he were to go in and invade, not only in terms of economic consequences and political consequences, but it'll be enormous consequences worldwide. This would be the largest, if he were to move in with all those forces, it would be the largest invasion since World War II. It would change the world.
Joining me is Congressman Seth Moulton. He's an Iraq War veteran, a member of the House Armed Services Committee, who spent time in Ukraine last month. Congressman, it's good to see you.
Good to see you too, Jim.
Will there be a full-scale Russian invasion of Ukraine?
There may very well be. And my fear is that we haven't been very well prepared for that option. That was the conclusion I reached when I went there in December. I sent my findings directly to the White House and also wrote an op-ed in the Wall Street Journal saying, look, we might think that he's only going to do a limited incursion, but we need to plan for the worst. And the White House is now doing that. What you hear Biden talking about is preparation for that kind of invasion, but I think it's a bit late.
Well, you also wrote in that piece, I believe it was that piece, that the stakes are in some ways even higher than Joe Biden is talking about. You believe that if Russia is successful in Ukraine, Ukraine is just the first stop on the Russian journey, correct?
Well, in many ways, Ukraine is already the third or fourth stop. I mean, look what he's done in Georgia. I mean, look what he's done in southern Ukraine, the Crimea already. He's clearly learned the lesson that aggression works. And if he relearns that lesson with Ukraine, but on a much wider scale by conducting something on the order of a full-scale invasion, then yes, I think we all have to ask what's next. I don't see any reason why after success in Ukraine, Putin would just say, okay, that's enough, let's stop.
You say that Joe Biden hasn't done all the things you think he should have done, at least not in timely fashion. Like what?
Well, there's three main things that we need to do. Number one, speed weapons procurement. They are sending weapons, defensive weapons, to the Ukrainians right now to increase the cost of a Russian invasion, but it's taken too long. And members of the House Armed Services Committee, myself included, have been calling on them to do this for months, in some ways for years, but certainly in the last few months. And it seems that weapons procurement is only speeding up now. It's a little bit late because they have to know how to use these weapons. Second, we've got to make clear exactly what these economic sanctions are going to be and how they're going to hurt Putin personally. Just yesterday, President Biden came out and said that he is considering personal sanctions against Putin. I've been calling for that for over a month. And third, the real weakness here in Putin's calculus is, in fact, his domestic support. And there were a lot of organized Russian mothers who protested the fact that Russian boys were coming back in body bags after the last invasion of Crimea. And so we need to communicate this directly to the Russian people. You can't just have a negotiation with Putin and expect him to convey the cost to his people. Russia has no problem speaking directly to the American people through the internet, trying to influence our elections. we should have no hesitation telling the Russian people the truth about what an invasion could cost.
Well, you say that one of the problems he faces, Putin faces, is lack of unity at home. It seems to me that one of the problems we face is lack of unity among our allies. Germany seems very hesitant to get involved in this effort, and some other NATO allies seem to be more concerned about the gas that flows from Russia to their country than they do about joining with the United States to stop this invasion.
Look, I think those points are overplayed. And frankly, Putin himself is trying to make any slight disagreement in the NATO alliance turn it into a huge division. I had an hour-long meeting with the German ambassador just last week, and it was very clear to me from that meeting that Germany is completely on board with us, completely on our side. But there are details to work out. You know, if we put tough banking sanctions on Russia, German banks tend to over-comply. They tend to go above and beyond the call of duty when it comes to compliance. We saw this as a result of the Iran nuclear deal. And so they want to make sure they have exceptions for German banks so that we don't hurt the German economy in unexpected ways just because we're trying to target Russia. These kinds of concerns are legitimate. The Germans don't want to have no gas for the winter. We are finally moving to reassure them that we will provide alternative gas supplies. But again, that's just happened in the last week. It should have happened a couple months ago, in my opinion. So, look, the NATO alliance.
If I may, I'm sorry, go ahead. But to put this in context, Congressman. Yeah, go ahead.
Okay, go ahead, Jim. Sorry.
I mean, it seems to me that I understand your criticism of the slow pace of some of the behavior by the Biden administration, but to put it in some context, we lived through 4 years of Putin's poodle being the president of the United States, Donald Trump. Joe Biden is doing the right things, it appears, according to you, just not on the timetable you'd like to see them done on. Is that a correct statement?
That's absolutely right, Jim. And that point should not be lost on anyone. That this is a very dire situation, in my estimation. I think we've known that for some time, and that's why I've been pushing the administration to do more and to act more quickly. But this is a complete sea change from having a president in the Oval Office who was a lapdog to Vladimir Putin, who trusted Putin. He told the world this. He trusted Putin more than the American intelligence agencies. So we've come a long way from Donald Trump. But this isn't just about playing politics with who's better about Russia. This is about responding to a national security crisis. And that's why I'm not afraid to criticize the White House if we need to be doing better, regardless of whether it's a Republican or a Democrat in the Oval Office.
You know, speaking of national security, in this case ours, we've heard a lot, we the American people have heard a lot of what we intend to do directed at Russia, but it seems to me not nearly enough about what Russia intends to do to retaliate in our direction. I read that he's just had conversations with leaders of Venezuela and Cuba. Is there the danger of a Cuban Missile Crisis 2.0? We all remember the Colonial Pipeline, if not from Putin himself, but from Russian operatives. Cyber attacks and putting weapons near our country, sort of tit for tat thing, are real threats, are they not?
They're very real threats. And I think just quickly, there's a historical lesson that Russia may have learned from the Cuban Missile Crisis, which is that, you know, as brilliantly as Kennedy handled that crisis, at the end of the day, the deal to undo it was, in fact, to take American missiles out of Europe. That's exactly the kind of thing that Putin wants here. And then on the cyber front, look, one of the things I've been working on for the past 5 or 6 years in Congress is modernizing our national security. I co-chaired the Future of Defense Task Force, which is all about shifting from the big old heavy technology of the past to the nimble hybrid technologies of the future. This is the kind of war that Russia is prepared to wage. It's not just about tanks rolling across Europe. It's about cyber attacks, undermining election, actions in space. These are the kinds of investments that we have been slow to make to modernize our national defense. And these are exactly the kinds of things that Putin is looking to take advantage of. So there's a lot still that could occur.
But, you know, staying 1 second, Congressman, on the cyber threat, it seems to me as someone who's not an expert in this area, but read a little bit, is that our critical infrastructure is at risk, and what stands between us and that is sort of a 21st century version of mutual assured destruction, that they know what we can do to their infrastructure, so they won't do it to ours. Is that not a realistic assessment?
It is, and we lost a lot of ground over the past 4 years. You know, one of the points that I would make whenever Trump brought up his silly border wall was that what we really need to build is a cyber wall around the United States to protect ourselves, to defend our critical infrastructure, our critical industries, even universities that are just doing basic scientific research that the Russians and the Chinese are trying to steal. We have to have better cyber defenses for our entire nation. And while Trump was worried about putting up a wall, on the border with Mexico, he wasn't investing in the kind of cybersecurity that we need. And that's another reason why we're more vulnerable today to these kinds of Russian attacks.
It seems to me one very piece of good news, though, on this preparation front is, unlike Trump, who will obviously criticize every move Biden makes. Yesterday, Mitch McConnell, the other leader of the Republicans in America, had this to say about what Joe Biden is doing.
I read that the president was huddled at Camp David Sunday with his team, and what I've been hearing since then is encouraging, that they're prepared to take steps before an incursion, not afterwards.
That's a pretty good sign, is it not, Congressman?
Well, it is a good sign. I mean, coming in the same week that Mitch McConnell apparently stated that Black Americans are not actually Americans, I guess it's a good sign that he's saying something right. Mitch McConnell has a long way to go before he puts the interests of the United States ahead of his own political interests. But look, I think that he respects what Joe Biden is doing, and he clearly recognizes this is a sea change from the approach that Donald Trump took to Russia.
You know, I'll probably go to hell for defending Mitch McConnell on one thing, but also this week he said that when Republicans are running in midterm elections, they should not run on the big lie that the election was stolen in 2020, which again seems to me to be, maybe it's a body double, but it seems to me to be good news. Congressman, can we shift for a second from international affairs to domestic politics for a remaining minute or two? I'm sure everybody watching knows that in 2016 and 2018, you were quite vocal saying that it was time for new, younger leadership to replace Nancy Pelosi and her team. And what seemed to resolve that dispute, for lack of a better expression, is she agreed to step down as Speaker or leader of the Democrats at the end of this term. Here she is yesterday talking about her at least running for Congress again. Here's Congresswoman Pelosi.
Our democracy is at risk, but as we say, we don't agonize, we organize. And that is why I am running for re-election to Congress and respectfully seek your support.
And nowhere in that statement, as I'm sure you know, Congressman, did she say anything about running for Speaker or leader of the Democrats should they not have a majority. But her spokesperson was asked by the Washington Post, and he said this, I have no idea what it means, but he said the Speaker is not on a shift, she's on a mission, whatever that means. Let's assume she does violate her commitment to you and your fellow members and does run to lead the Democrats again. Are you content with that?
No, I mean, look, her agreement was about running for Speaker, not about running for re-election. It's obviously entirely up to her whether she wants to for re-election.
Right, I understand. If she runs for Speaker or leader, yeah, go ahead.
Look, you want to have leaders you can trust, and we made that agreement in trust, and we would expect her to live up to it.
And if she does not live up to it, will you support an alternative candidate?
I certainly would if there's a better candidate running. I'm always going to vote for the best candidate. And I hope that you will see other people stepping up to run for speaker and the other positions in leadership, because I do think that we need new leadership in the Democratic Party. And as we look to a troubling midterm season, one of the things I think that can give Democrats across the country a lot of hope is some real clear plans for the future. That this is not a party that is sort of having its last gasp in the House. There are a lot of people who expect our demise, but rather we're a party that's really building for a strong future. And that's how we show America that we should hold the House in 2022 and pick up even more seats going forward.
Congressman, it's good to see you. Thanks so much for your time.
Jim, good to see you too.
Issues surrounding homelessness in Boston have been getting a lot more attention in recent months, with discussions about mass and caste featuring prominently in the mayoral election and since. And an upcoming event is aiming to raise that awareness even more, and money to help. The annual Winter Walk is a 2-mile walk around the city that always takes place during the coldest month of the year. It's an opportunity to walk in the shoes of and alongside some of the far too many men, women, and children who've experienced homelessness in Boston. People like Bob.
They look at you and, they say, oh, he's homeless, he's a druggie, he's a drunk. A lot of these people, like myself, we're just people that fell on hard times. I was living in a home, a nice apartment for 30-so-what years. He died, and so the building was sold and they gave us 30 days to get out. And the next thing you know, I couldn't afford the rent.
That's just a preview of a video that will be shown at this year's Winter Walk on February 13th. It's 6th year running. Two of the walk's co-founders, Paul English, who you may know from Kayak and Moonbeam and more, and Ari Barbanel join me now. Ari and Paul, it's good to see you both.
Good to see you, Jim. Thanks for having us on the show again.
Pleasure. Ari, why do you do this every February?
Because there is still homelessness in our community, and we need to come together first and foremost to change our perceptions and break stigma so we can get to the bigger systemic changes.
Paul, on your website, it says ending homelessness is within our reach. Is that something you believe or something you want to believe?
It's something I believe. It just takes political will and a commitment by people to say it should be unacceptable to see people sleeping on the street. And it is a funding issue. We know that actually giving people homes and wraparound services can in many cases be cheaper than treating them in emergency rooms and with some of the interventions that are done today. But I think it's really, we just need the political will to fund housing and wraparound services.
Do you think, Paul, in a perverse sort of way, that so many more people have witnessed, either in person or on their television screen, the pain of mass and caste, that in some ways that may help speed this cause along?
Yeah, I don't like to think of unfortunate events leading to better events, but I think that might be the case. Even as I look at the intro video that you just played at the beginning of this segment, it's uncomfortable to encounter someone homeless in the street. And, we often divert our eyes away from them because it's uncomfortable confronting someone who's in such extremely different circumstance than us. And what we're trying to do with the Winter Walk is to demystify and to meet some people and learn a little bit more about it.
And, Ari, we should delve into that a second. As I said at the top, you're not just walking for people who are homeless, you're walking with people who are homeless. I assume that's not just rhetoric, correct?
Exactly. No, there is a huge community of individuals with lived experience that walk with us, whether they're currently homeless or formerly homeless or somewhere in between. All of our partner organizations bring clients and patients and community with them. It's about being shoulder to shoulder and sharing stories, not just from the stage, but as you're walking through Copley Plaza.
Marjorie Egan and you were kind enough to invite us to be part of this, and we will be. And we were talking to a coworker yesterday who said, and he is a very empathetic person, said, why are they doing this in February? And you consciously, Ari, do this in February because you want the weather to be as brutal as is humanly possible. That is correct?
Absolutely. I hope for the coldest, snowiest day.
Paul, do you worry that, I have spoken to the people who run homeless shelters who say, and not uncharitably, that we have hundreds of people who call and say, can I help on Thanksgiving? And when you say, well, I'm full, we're full on Thanksgiving, thank you, how about another day? They say no. Do you worry that the homeless who are part of this effort see this as a one and done kind of thing? Great commitment on one day, then there's 364 more, and then we'll see you again next year?
Well, the good thing about it is Ari and the team who run Winter Walk every year have now raised millions of dollars to support organizations like Pine Street and Rosie's Place and many other organizations in the city. So we're making a difference in that the walkers are raising actual funds. And then I think also just forming relationships between walkers, and if not walkers and homeless people directly, between walkers and service organizations. So one of the things that I ask people to do at the end of the Winter Walk is I say, thank you for coming today and walking and learning about homelessness. But before you leave, we'd like you to join the email list of one of these service groups and agree to one meeting. And we want to make sure it extends beyond that one day, that people start to form a relationship and start to become part of this movement to figure out how can we end homelessness in Boston.
That's great. So, Ari, what happens on the 13th? Tell people, when do they show? We're going to give them registration information in a minute. What is the event?
It is a joyous celebration of wanting to end homelessness. And so we come together on Copley Plaza for the in-person version back this year. And we'll register at 8:30, get warm coffee, move to the stage where we'll hear some wonderful stories. We'll see the rest of that video with my friend Bob. And then we'll take our march through the city. And we'll come back. It's just a brief 2 miles, and we'll have breakfast and we'll hear music. And then we will go on with our day, hopefully inspired to make change. And I'll say that if being in person is not possible, or you're coming from farther away, we are doing a remote option this year as well. So we'll ask people to take their own walks or have thoughtful moments about homelessness, and we'll share some of the same resources and information. And then we'll have an online presentation at 2 p.m. on the same day as the in-person walk.
You know, as cold as it is, Ari, first with you, how do you feel on this day? This is not the first, this is the 6th, I believe. How do you feel on the day when you do this, Ari?
It's the most inspiring day of my year, I think, because of, like Paul said, that it's a moment to become part of a movement. And I do think that you leave feeling joy and feeling ready to take the next steps. So even if the next step is just that you opened the door for someone at Dunkin' Donuts who looked like they might be homeless, we got there. We got there with you. You have a little bit of a different shift in how you see things. And that's the beginning on that day in February. And we go from there.
Paul, we have 30 seconds. What's it do for you?
It connects me to people in Boston who are in need. And I think many of us in Boston's a very wealthy city, and many of us have living really good lives in the city. But I think we need to be connected to those that are suffering. And the Winter Walk for me is an event where you can get connected to this community and then figure out what you can do to help.
Well, I'm really glad you're doing it, and I hope everybody watching does it with you. We're looking forward to being there. Thanks so much for your time, and thanks so much for your work.
Thanks a lot, Jim.
Thank you.
Again, the walk will take place on February 13th. That's rain, snow, or shine. For more info and to register for the event, head to winterwalkboston.org. Only one man was elected to the Baseball Hall of Fame last night, Red Sox legend David Ortiz. The man known to most as Big Papi was the key part of Boston's 2004, 2007, and 2013 World Series wins, but I'd argue his work off the field was even more impressive, as I saw firsthand a few times when he joined Granite Telecommunications' annual Saving by Shaving event to raise money for cancer research, one of many, many causes in and around the city that Ortiz supports, even long after his retirement.
Raise money, to save life, to help people. That's something that I'm always down with, and this type of cause is something that is beautiful. I mean, Boston, I play here for a long time, and one thing that I learned about this city, this town, is how grateful and how thankful this town is to their own community, you know what I'm saying? So I'm always down with this type of thing.
You know, one guy once said, I can't remember his name, it is our bleeping city.
Bleep!
Our bleeping city and his. A true Hall of Famer in more ways than one. That's it for tonight. Please come back tomorrow. We'll take up what Supreme Court Justice Stephen Breyer's retirement means for the future of the court. Plus, nurses burnt out by the pandemic are speaking out against what they say is hospital greed. Thanks for watching. Stay safe and stay tuned for another installment of GBH News' Curiosity Desk.
Friday on Talking Politics, with no COVID vaccines for young kids, limited masking abilities, and constant childcare shutdowns, many parents and caregivers are feeling left behind and at a breaking point. Can government do more? Friday at 7.
Today, we are going all in on a minor urban mystery here in Boston. In a typical year, the city of Boston issues about 5,000 permits for street excavations. Companies like Comcast and Verizon dig to lay cable. National Grid tears up stretches to repair gas lines. And well over 100 different private companies working for homeowners or commercial properties lay underground pipes that tap into water mains. Each time a company digs up a Boston street, they are responsible for repairing it when they're done. And crucially, the city has a 3-year warranty on every single one of those patches. According to city officials, about 10% of these patches go bad, cracking, crumbling at the edges, sinking, and they need to be repaired. When that happens, how do city officials know whether that particular patch is still under warranty? And if it is, what company is responsible for fixing it? That's where these guys come in. They are called A-tags, short for asphalt tags, and they are the centerpiece of the City of Boston's street repair tracking system. Though they are but little, about 1.5 inches in diameter, they are fiercely informative, if you know how to decode them. The year the patch was laid is marked at the center of each A-tag, so it's easy to quickly identify whether it's still under warranty. As for who laid each patch, city officials devised a color coding system. Now, big companies that do a lot of digging, they get their own custom colors and they get to display their name on their A-tags.
National Grid, you're yellow. Boston Water and Sewer, you're blue. MWRA, you're light blue. Comcast and Verizon, you're orange. Eversource, you're red. I said the steam company, you're white.
Private contractors who work under the streets of Boston get a green A-tag with a unique ID number at the top. So all it takes is a quick look at a legend to know who did the job. A-tags have been required on every patch laid in the city of Boston since 2011, and companies can be fined if they don't embed their chip. The system has been a rousing success, according to city officials, who say the compliance rate is somewhere between 98 and 99%. As for that last 1 to 2%, now that you know the code, you too can be an inspector. If you see a failing patch in your neighborhood, call 311, or better yet, snap a pic and tweet it at boss311. So there you have it, the humble A-tag, an ace up the city's sleeve that keeps the odds high. The streets stay even. Don't forget to like and subscribe, and perhaps more importantly, ante up and let me know what you are curious about, because hey, I might just say, deal me in. I'm Edgar B. Horwick III. Stay curious out there.
The Curiosity Desk is sponsored by Emerson College, inspiring curiosity and creative expression in all of us.